The living room, where the family meets to discuss issues, any issue which may be bothering one of the family members. That's what we do each and every Tuesday on WAC 90.1 FM with Ricardo Mitchell and DJ Aaron 868. We have casual conversations on serious topics, from sports to culture, mental health to economics, relationships to life lessons. Join us each and every Tuesday on WAC 90.1 FM. The Living Room, casual conversations on serious topics.
This episode contains sensitive topics including violence, hostages, military action, sexual violence, and geopolitics, which might offend viewers. Views expressed do not reflect WAC 90.1 FM.
It is now 6 p.m. here in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know what time it is where you are, but I'm glad to know you're locked onto the true nation station WACK 90.1 FM, where we are
Culture crazy.
First and foremost, let's kick this off as we always do, all right? Must give thanks and praises to the Almighty for granting us the gift of life and seeing another day. No matter what time of day it is, you must always
give thanks.
Secondly, we must say thank you to those that went before us, and we are not just talking about our ancestors, the original inhabitants of Trinidad and Tobago, the Taínos and the Calinagos, because we all know, accept, reiterate, and the say it would be chest that Columbus lied, but also to our brother in music, Tony Prescott, where the P this week stands for
propaganda, brother. Propaganda.
Yeah. No further explanation needed.
Yeah, correct is right.
Before we go any further, there's something that there are two things I wanted to do. I want to say a special good evening going out to two loyal listeners of the living room, Eddie and Bonnie. They are loyal listeners of the living room and they enjoy the conversations that we have each and every week. So I want to shout them out. And also, here now, Olia, we the support the football team or we cricket team or whoever, Tati, and we want to hold the coaches of those teams accountable. If we lost one game, we got the manager fired. Why is it that such terrible instances could happen in a country and yet still there's not a public outcry or hashtag Ten Hag out or hashtag Javi out trending on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram?
No, I am tempted to believe that you're not referring to sport and athletics. I believe that there are certain things you're seeing happening in our national landscape and you're wondering why there is no cry for accountability or and acceptance of responsibility from the leaders.
Exactly. Right, so just saying, the same way how we want to hold Ten Hag accountable when, man, you have that kind of atrocious performance against Bournemouth. Let me start to hold certain ministers accountable too now.
Right.
Because I'm fed up of the bloodshed. As the song say, I'm fed up of the boom and I'm fed up of the bang. But remember, if we don't hold people accountable, how we going and see change, right?
Yeah, okay. I actually saw a news report this morning that says a particular minister is not going to resign based on certain failures that occurred under his watch, and that he, if it were him having suffered that particular loss,
he would have sued the state as well.
He also would have sued the state. So
Yes,
you recognize that while you're not being complicit in it, you do acknowledge that you have that something tragic has occurred on your watch and that there deserves to be some form of investigation and recompense. But you're not stepping down.
How much murders we have now? Like
I don't
something?
Well, come on, man. What for the year?
Yeah.
It's 400 and something, you say, you know.
I don't know. I just called a random number because it's real high.
Yeah, I mean, while 400 and something was hyperbolic, it's so sad that if the year ended with 400 and something murders, we would be grateful.
We'd be thankful.
What you telling, man?
Right,
What's going on here?
But really and truly, guys, we're not here to talk about local propaganda today. We are here to address an international issue.
Yeah.
And to address an international issue of this magnitude, we have to bring a guest whose magnitude could consume the issues. and educate us to the issues. Now, we have had this guest before, so we won't go into the long, detailed bio. But Ricardo, I will give you the honor and hand over to you now to properly introduce our guest today.
Yeah, having had the honor of being able to interview a state representative to the region before, we'd just like to very quickly bring in Ambassador Itai Bardov. He is the ambassador of the State of Israel to Panama, and he's the non-resident ambassador to Barbados, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and CARICOM. He is here to speak with us today regarding the attack that occurred over the weekend. Iran attacked Israel with several hundred drones and missiles, and some people see it as an escalation, as a possible escalation to the ongoing conflict in the Gaza. So we're here to get as high level as possible report as to what is occurring and how it impacts us as a nation and a region. So we'd like to welcome into the living room His Excellency Ambassador Itai Bardov.
Welcome to the living room. Welcome to the living room. Welcome to the living room. Welcome to the living room.
And as promised, we have with us Ambassador Itai Bardov, the Israeli ambassador to Panama, the region. He's with us for a few minutes this morning. If I'm not mistaken, he's from one interview and heading to another. So, Ambassador, thank you for joining us in the living room, and we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Ricardo. It's a pleasure being with you guys again.
No time for pleasantries. As glad as we are to see you again, it is unfortunate that is under these circumstances.
Yes.
So, straight to the meat of the matter. What are you trying to accomplish with these conversations that you're having?
Well, specifically, if we speak about the Caribbean region, I think there's a lot of misinformation spreading in the Caribbean, whether it's in the media or in social media. And I'm trying to present the Israeli perspective, but also trying to give the facts on the ground and not this distorted kind of narrative that has been, unfortunately, been spreading around in the Caribbean. So it is very important for me to not just present Israel's perspective, but to really explain the situation on the ground and not sometimes distorted perceptions as they are appearing in many places in the Caribbean.
It is unfortunate that even some of your attempts to communicate clearly what is happening are being a little bit misrepresented. I saw an article just recently, Monday morning if I'm not mistaken, and some of the language suggested that there was still a basic misunderstanding of what it is going on in the Middle East right now. We've seen titles like the Israeli-Palestine war as opposed to it being the Israeli-Hamas conflict. They are just miscommunications that are being transmitted. So this is an opportunity for you to clear up certain misconceptions as to what's actually happening. So I would like to ask Aaron, for somebody who might not be as entrenched in the information as I might be, what would you ask the ambassador at this moment to help you clarify something that you might not be clear about?
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm uninformed, because remember we had the initial conversation in November where we touched on a few of the issues surrounding the matter. But I'll just ask, from your perspective, Ambassador, you just mentioned the real situation on the ground, right? Could you shed some light on what that real situation is, so that we wouldn't just take it from the media, but we would get it directly from you? What is the real situation on the ground?
So currently, first of all, it's important to explain to people that they understand there are over 150,000 Israelis still evacuated from their homes because of the different threats, whether near Gaza border or in Lebanon from Hezbollah, which is an Iranian proxy. Regarding what is going on in Gaza, and as Ricardo said very, very accurately, this is a campaign against Hamas, solely against Hamas, which is holding 133 hostages captive. Now, just that you understand the situation of these hostages, we assume that of the 133 hostages still being kept in captivity in tunnels and bunkers in Gaza, around 35 are dead. Hamas is holding their bodies and the rest are alive. And I say assume because we don't know it for a fact. Hamas is not providing any kind of information about these hostages. It is all evidence that we've managed to see either from videos taken by Hamas terrorists themselves, where we've seen them taking bodies, not just live people, or information that we've managed to gather from different sources about what happened to some of the captives after they were taken alive and murdered during captivity. But Hamas is not allowing any, not the Red Cross, any visits, anyone to visit these hostages. And we know from hostages that have been released in a previous deal that the women, the young women, are being sexually abused, raped in captivity by Hamas. And I'm talking about young women, 18, 19, 20 years old. There's a year-old baby, a 4-year-old child, their parents. We have 80-year-old elderly people who are in captivity, and we have no idea of, are they eating? Are they getting any kind of medical attention? Because nothing is being provided by Hamas. And I would ask your viewers to ask themselves, where is the condemnation against Hamas, a terrorist organization that kidnapped 240 people from their beds in the morning days of a sacred holiday in Israel, and are now holding 133 of them without any minimum rights whatsoever. So the situation right now is difficult. Israel has managed to accomplish quite a few objectives in Gaza and has managed to significantly harm Hamas and reduce the number of Hamas terrorists. But still, there's a smaller number of soldiers, Israeli soldiers in Gaza today than there were when Israel first entered Gaza to try and rescue the hostages. But right now, we are concentrating in the southern part of Gaza, in the area of Rafah, where we believe that the majority of the hostages are being kept and that the leadership of Hamas is hiding subterraneanly in tunnels and in bunkers.
Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Just one quick follow-up, and I just want a very quick answer to this one. Ricardo stressed that it is not Israel-Palestine, right?
Yeah.
It is Israel-Hamas.
Yes.
So just for clarity purposes and refamiliarization purposes, Hamas is different to the Palestinian state.
Well, yes. I mean, you have to remember there are different factions in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. I want to remind you that Hamas took over Gaza. Israel withdrew from Gaza entirely in 2005, completely withdrew without any preconditions whatsoever, in the hopes that the Palestinians would take advantage and create their own Singapore in that region. But what happened was when Israel left, it was the Palestinian Authority that was in control. But Hamas took over in a very bloody coup, in a violent revolution, killing members of the Palestinian Authority, throwing their officials from rooftops and dragging their bodies in the streets of Gaza. So saying that Hamas does not, represent the Palestinian people, that is exactly correct. But they are representing a faction of the Palestinian people. And unfortunately, there have been many Palestinians who have supported what Hamas has done on October 7th. And many of those who entered Israel on October 7th took advantage of what was going on, were civilians, not only member, the terrorists themselves, but many civilians joined, and they took part in this party of murder and of rape, and stole a lot of stuff from homes in the area. But I think, it's up to the Palestinians at the end of the day to decide who they want to represent them. And if they really want to live in coexistence with Israel, if they want to have, like we want, if they want to live in peace, it is important that they choose a government that is intent on peace and not on violence and war and destruction.
All right, those were two of my major questions, Ricardo. So if I have any others, which I hope I don't, because I know the abbreviation of time which we have with the ambassador, I will try
Thank
my
you.
best.
Thank you. I'm looking at the response to April 13th attack.
Mhm.
I've seen from various news reports that it was largely unsuccessful in the sense that there was a collective and even allied defense mechanism in place. How does this, for the uninformed, for the people who might just glance at a headline or see a highlight, what does this signal in the sense that it was not Israel standing by herself as a nation against this particular attack?
Absolutely right. I just first want to say, for that your viewers understand, in the past, Israel and Iran had peace relationship. We had very warm and close relationships. We even had an embassy in Tehran. But in 1979, after the Islamic Revolution and the Ayatollah Khomeini took over, that is when, of course, ties were severed, and Iran started attacking Israel. So for 45 years, Iran has been attacking Israel, but it has been doing it through proxies, not from its own territory, but using the many proxies, the many terrorist organizations that it is funding in the region, whether it's Hamas or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad or Hezbollah in Lebanon. And, you see what's going on with the Houthis in Yemen, and what's going on in Syria and these Shiite organizations in Iraq, all being funded by Iran. Iran is a number one destabilizer of the Middle East, and it is just a danger to stability. Now, what happened on April 13th was that Iran initiated or perpetrated a massive attack against Israel. More than 300 missiles and drones fired towards Israel. You have to understand, 170 drones, the exact same drones that are being used by Russia against Ukraine, causing massive damage in Ukraine, was sent by Iran towards Israel. 120 ballistic missiles, 30 cruise missiles. This is a blatant declaration of war against Israel. But we managed to stop this attack, we managed to intercept 99% of these projectiles, thanks to Israeli capabilities and high technologies, but also to the partnership with the United States, some of the European governments, European countries, and some of the Arab moderate countries that also took part in intercepting these missiles and drones. And this shows you that the alliance that Israel has with the moderate governments and the moderate groups and countries in the region and outside against this extremist, bloodthirsty regime. Now, the Iranian regime is not just an enemy of Israel. It is threatening the many moderate countries in the region, but it is also killing its own people. Just today, I saw a video of a young woman in Iran who was being dragged violently into a van by the Iranian morality police. And her crime was that she was walking around with her hair exposed. Her hair was uncovered, and that is, of course, a crime. And we know from previous instances, many of these women are taken into prison and tortured in prison, and some even die. Many Iranians have died while protesting against the Iranian regime. And one last anecdote is we've been getting images from Tehran of graffiti painted in different areas, calling the Israeli government to please take out the Iranian regime. The Iranian people have had enough with this dictatorship, with this tyrannical regime, and from under which they have been suffering for decades.
Thank you for that, Ambassador Bardov. I know you're pressed for time, so I do have one important question for you.
Sure.
Israeli-Caribbean relations have never really been headline news in the region. Right? The question I would ask you is, what does it matter to the Trinidad and Tobago public, to the citizenry, if there is a degradation of relations between Israel and the Caribbean?
Before you answer, Ambassador, I would just amend Ricardo's question, not just to Trinidad and Tobago, but to CARICOM.
Yes. Yes, that's a great question, and thank you for that addition. Prior to October 7th, I visited different Caribbean countries. I visited CARICOM, but also the four countries that I cover, which is Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, Guyana, and Barbados. And the discussions that we had, there were how Israel, the different programs that we were planning to implement in technologies such as in water technologies, agriculture technologies, medical technologies. Israel is a global leader in these technologies and can be of huge assistance to the countries of the Caribbean in different areas. And for instance, with CARICOM, we've been implementing different courses in agriculture for people from the Caribbean to come to Israel. The problem is that since October 7th, what we have seen, I think part of it has to do with the concern from the some of the communities in these countries, namely the Muslim community that has been very vocal, against Israel in a strong way. And I think a lot of it has to do with politics. But I do have to say, I am quite disappointed by the reaction from CARICOM and from the some of the Caribbean governments who have failed to really condemn Hamas for what it has done. I haven't seen CARICOM come out with a statement against Iran following this blatant destabilizing attack that they perpetrated on April 13th. I hope they do come with a declaration where they will say that this is completely against any international values or norms, the way Iran attacked Israel. So I think the Caribbean people should be, quite concerned from extreme elements within the region that are operating there, that are being funded or operated by Iran and Hezbollah. And just as an example, if we look at the conflict right now between Venezuela and Guyana, Venezuela has been receiving tons, truckloads of arms from Iran for years. Iran has been arming Venezuela, and that should be a big concern for the Guyanese people. But this is just one example. Hezbollah and Iran are operating in the region, in Latin America and the Caribbean, in smuggling drugs as a source as a destabilizing source, but also to make money for their own causes. So this is something that we definitely have to take into account, and I would ask the Caribbean people to stand with Israel as we share the same values, the values of the democratic values, values of freedom and liberty, values of human rights and equality. And we are right now in the frontier, a frontier for the Western world. We are in the frontier against a dark, vicious, cruel entity that has a different set of norms that we are used to in the Western world, and whether it is Hamas, whether it is Hezbollah, whether it is Iran. So I would call the Caribbean governments and the Caribbean people to please stand with Israel, a Western, democratic, liberal country against these forces that Israel is currently fighting.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much, Ambassador Itai Bardov. I would like to make a closing point regarding this conversation. I've noticed over the past several months that there has been division within different communities. I have seen members of the Islamic community who are pro-Israel. I have seen members of the Christian communities who are pro-Palestine. We have to acknowledge that even within our own communities, we might not be in positions to safely or comfortably voice the opinions that we have. But it is important that we hold our own communities accountable for their own principles and values. It is not enough to stay silent and observe within your community, within your brotherhoods and your fraternities and your organizations that, that is them and I dare not speak against them. There's a time where we have to acknowledge the humanity that underlies and underscores all of our beliefs and all of our practices, and recognize that at some point in time we have to stand for the principle as opposed for the participation.
Yes, so I agree. I completely agree with you. And I think, and by the way, I also agree. I've encountered Muslims in Caribbeans who are standing with Israel, but they are they're more careful. They're a little they're too afraid to be vocal, as the anti-Israeli groups or the pro-Hamas groups are. But I would also want to add one point. I think it is quite amazing how the Israeli-Hamas conflict and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is such a complicated one, which goes back in history, 1,000 years, or decades, since the creation of the state of Israel and before. But so it is very complicated. People do not have sufficient knowledge of the what is going on, but they are extremely opinionated. They have a very strong opinion without knowing all the facts. And I would urge people to really educate themselves and not just succumb to this Instagram or Twitter or Facebook information that they are seeing that is so distorted. And that is something that I think, we need a little bit more of really understanding what's going on. Like, for instance, the calling of Israel as a colonial entity, which is something that I've heard a number of times. Without them there's never been a Palestinian state. If you ask Palestinians who are their historic figures, they can only go back 40 years. There's no real history. Now, this is not to say that there's no Palestinian people. It's just to say that Israel is an indigenous people in that region going back 3,500 years. And we are part of that region. Israel has offered peace treaties many times during the last 76 years, whether it's from the 1947 partition plan, the Oslo Accords, and the different treaties proposed by Prime Minister Olmert and so forth, always to be rejected by the Palestinian side. So I'm saying this as an Israeli ambassador. I hope for peace. I'm open to discussion and dialogue with anyone, by the way, including the Muslim communities in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago. If they want to reach out and have a true, transparent dialogue, I'm absolutely ready for that and happy to do it with them so that we can share our views, the information, and our concerns.
Thank you very much, because I was actually going to ask you if you were open to dialogue, which I know personally that you are, but the listeners, that is an open call for dialogue. Let us try to establish peace. Ambassador, I thank you so much for your time this morning, and I God be with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Aaron. And I hope to see you again soon in better times when I can talk about the cooperation that we're having between Israel and Caribbean countries and the assistance that Israel is providing in different technologies for the Caribbean countries. So hopefully that comes soon. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for your time, Ambassador.
Bye-bye.
Special thanks goes out to the Understanding Israel Foundation, the UIF, for facilitating this connection between the ambassador and the living room.
Though that interview was curtailed due to the availability of the ambassador and his very tight schedule, I want to say a special thank you to him, because firstly, it must not be easy running from interview to interview to interview to get the message of what is going on the ground, get the message of the history of negotiation or lack thereof, get the message of the care or concern and the lack of humanity for hostages, to get the message of the truth, as he would put it, to get the message of here was going, and to break this down in the simplest too, here was going on. Not everything you see on social media is true.
Hey, Aaron, we used to laugh back in the day when they say, well, I saw it on the internet, so it must be true. And now it's kind of scary to think.
You just think that?
No, I remember I'm a couple years older than you, so the internet has a mechanism. We saw its introduction. There's a hard 5 years. We saw the introduction of this level of communication and conversation and the ability to present opinion like never before. And are we going to extend the invitation again? We're going to extend the invitation again for dialogue. There are people who might believe that, well, we only having conversation with one side. But you have to remember, again, if you have a conversation with a state representative, right? The next person that you bring on here to have conversation has to be able to navigate the diplomacy.
And I'm not going to say, when we try to bring guests in on issues, we bring SMEs in, subject matter experts. So if we bring in a SME that is a subject matter expert, the countering guest cannot be a SME, in common letters, a social media expert.
Fair. Right. And again, the ambassador has extended the invitation to members and leaders of the Islamic community who would be interested in conversation with him. Right. So just let us know. We'll make it possible, and I will actually reach out to a couple of people that I know as well to see how interested they are in the dialogue.
And as taboo or as contradictory as my next statement is going to sound, if there are any groups that are pro-Palestine in Trinidad and Tobago, we are also willing to have that conversation as well, because we don't want you to think that the living room is pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. A living room is a common space in a house, and regardless of your point of view on the matter, we are willing to have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
with
it is
that
necessary in the interest of dialogue.
with that being said as well, we again thank the ambassador for his time. We thank him firstly, not just for his time, but for reaching out to us to want to have this interview.
Yeah.
Right?
I cannot imagine that is not a job, honestly, that despite my natural inclination to community and social dynamic and process and so on, I don't know.
I don't want that job. Honestly, I love the answers to the questions that he gave. I know it seemed rushed, but he only had a short space of time with us. But I thank him for taking the time to answer the questions. And I tried my best to speak today from a place of ignorance. And you have to remember, folks, ignorance and arrogance are two totally different things.
Right. Not the colloquial sense of ignorant.
Yeah. Ignorance is not knowing. And I wanted to learn. But sometimes the fact that we are ignorant to topics brings a level of arrogance. And we ask that you don't bring any arrogance to a topic like this. Go out there, and as the youths they say, go on Dr. Eric Williams' internet, or Patrick Manning internet, or Basdeo Pandey internet. You go on the internet and seek facts. Because one thing we have learned and continue to learn is that when Ricardo, and let me give you a story about this. When I was in Form 5 and writing SBAs, for me to get information on SBAs, I will go to the library in San Fernando. That time, the library used to be upstairs La Pique Plaza on the 3rd floor.
Right.
Right? So you enter through the back step. You might go online on the promenade first for your little social interaction because you want to meet the young ladies. Right? Then you walk up this.
About that.
Wow.
Absolutely nothing about that.
Okay, beacon of lies. Right.
You were making a point.
Right. I was interrupted by somebody saying that they didn't used to go on the promenade online. Anyhow, right. So after you finish lying on the promenade, you walk up the step on the side by that food establishment, and you cut through the side door and you go up in the library. And in the library, you would have encountered at least probably 20 or 30 other students from various schools, all seeking the use of encyclopedias. Because back in the early thousands, internet wasn't really a big thing as yet. It wasn't as easily accessible.
Yeah.
So we all would have had to go to the same institution, which is the library, to get information from the same documents, which was the encyclopedias, to produce a SP. Right? And I could assure you, in the late 90s, early thousands, a lot of the information which was presented in SPAs would have been reliable because it came from one unified source.
Peer-reviewed, academic level.
Yes. But fast forward now 20 years, when social media or even the internet is used as a source of information for everything. So we have gone from doing references or bibliographies within our SPAs to now putting citations, basically answering this question, what website to get from.
Right.
The issue is the change in sourcing information has brought about an increase in incorrect information being cited. I implore, I'm not saying go back to the old school days and go and look for encyclopedia.
Although, ironically enough, this morning, my brother Darian messaged me to ask me if I'm interested in buying encyclopedias.
Serious?
Yeah. So if you are interested, I could put you on to him, because it might not be a bad idea to have some information off grid now, you know, where they can't keep going in and changing.
Can now go and say, when we're talking citations here, I'm telling you this, and this is from a position that I sit in where I have a lot of conversations with youth about research and information. If you cite in Wikipedia as your point of reference, brother man, let me don't even bother to have a conversation.
Right.
If you cite in Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or Facebook, or Threads, or Twitter X, as your point of reference, brother man, we're wasting time. We're not having this conversation.
You know, Aaron, go ahead.
Because, and to close off the loop of my elongated story, and to marry it with what the ambassador said, yes, information is out there, but there's a lot of misinformation too. Yeah. So be very careful about where you get the information. And just like how when we played pass the message in primary school, when you're passing the message along, make sure if the message is the moth eat cloth at the start of the story, make sure at the end it is the moth eat cloth.
Versus the moth bring broth.
Oh, you being nice. The story at the end might be, well, boy, here what's going on now, boy. The moth is a moth that is go by the cloth store, but you don't buy cloth, you know. All the mothers go and do is watch the prices by that store, then it is go online and go on Amazon and buy the cloth there and bring it in and get taken advantage of by customs just so it could buy a new pair of pants.
Starting to feel like we have some scope creep here on that story. Aaron, let me tell you guys something very, very interesting, right? I like information. I want to send a special hello and greetings to a friend of mine who sends me a lot of magazines and newspapers, etc. So I have access to the information. There was something I came across on BBC yesterday morning, or was it the morning before, right? While the missile strike was going on, Iran was airing footage on their local channels of this fire blazing, and they were telling people that was the result of the missile strike. They were promoting to their people that there are successes in this missile strike. And then BBC.com verified that footage was actually footage of a fire in Chile from several months before. You get what I'm saying? BBC verified that, hey, this ain't what they're saying it is. People have this, we had to be very, very careful about not just what is communicated, but when and why.
I could add to that.
Sure.
You know now on Twitter, if you post a video of something and citing that it is, let's just say, you post a picture of Aaron and Ricardo doing this now, right? Twitter actually verifies it and says, no, this is not actual footage of
Right.
Tuesday, the 16th of April. This was an interview held between Ricardo and Aaron on the 28th of November from 2023.
Right. So fact checking, particularly with reputable platforms, is a must. There are legal departments dedicated to verifying information because misinformation and propaganda is so prevalent. And if you want, while you're there, while you're clickety clacketing, you could look it up. BBC.com is like the second headline showing you that the footage that they aired was not actually what happened. I'm just saying that we have to be very mindful, and while we try our best to deal with subject matter experts and to get the information straight from the source, yet everybody has an agenda, right? There are inherent biases. People are going to say that we inherently bias, but at the end of the day, our job in this space is to bring the conversation so that you can pick the sense from the nonsense yourself.
People don't want to hear that, Ricardo. You know why?
There are people who would have stopped listening just because of who the guest was. Well, I mean, come on, man. I mean, we're not subject to learning anything other than what confirms what we feel already. That's not knowledge. That's not learning.
I'm not going to say, Ricardo, and we need to fully accept that. Even myself at times, I am biased with the information I have.
Right.
Because I will admit, up to Sunday, I was biased on a specific topic, which I am not going to reveal. But after a conversation I had on Sunday night with a brethren of mine, I realized, here's what's going on. My point of view is my point of view. My standards are my standards. But unless I'm actually involved in a situation, I don't know how I go and act.
Right.
So sometimes you might judge a situation using your metric system, your value system. But only when you're really in the situation, you really understand, wait now, I might do the exact same thing, you know.
Aaron, you know, I'm curious. We in Trinidad and Tobago, where we are now building shrines to our sense of security. When you walk past neighborhoods, is the wall so high you can't see the house. On top of the walls, you have fencing and razor wire and all those types of things. Windows covered with burglar proof. Everybody have LED lights and CCTV. The premise of we even have in contention right now, right? Deliberation as to our ability to defend ourselves if somebody come into our home, right? Access to the means to defend yourself, etc. We understand the fear of being violated. Anybody who's been a victim of a crime knows that, hey, listen, once conditions resembling that occur, having already experienced it, you have a type of reaction. So a car slowing down and you're gonna second guess, right? Somebody walking to your store, you're gonna second guess. Somebody walking on the same side of the street with you, you're gonna second guess. We have all been impacted by the things that have happened to us or to people near and dear to us. It is very interesting to me that we do have a more sympathetic audience when it comes to somebody's home has been violated, the family has been abducted, they're being subject to repeated torture and trauma and violence just because sometimes it's what it look like, sometimes it's because you couldn't get what you want, so you take who you could get. I just find it very interesting for our community that raising arms about feeling victimized and unable to defend yourself, that, you know, they're so critical of peoples that raising arms to defend themselves. But I also recognize that our positions on experiences are often based on the principles that apply to us, that we feel apply to us. As I said earlier, biblically, Israel are the people of God that Christians would have been grafted into via Christ's sacrifice. And there are Christians who are not siding with Israel because they identify with what they see in terms of the humanity of the consequences or inhumanity of the consequences of the conflict. I can't vex with somebody for feeling that level of empathy and for feeling that need to raise the voice in that particular form and fashion. but we also have to allow people the space to disagree with us. We also have to allow people the space to present what the perspective is so that we could learn and hopefully find a space in between where we could forward some kind of understanding and hopefully peace going forward.
You see, and this is something that I think as a people we genuinely struggle with. We demand, I shouldn't say demand is the wrong word. We ask things of the general public, which a lot of the general public cannot deliver, which is what generally leads to a place of disappointment. We ask for integrity in our leadership when a lot of our leaders are guided by a metric system of nothing. A self
system of nothing.
Yeah. What's 0 divided by 0?
We don't know. What's 0 divided by 0? Mathematically.
Sure. Or it
Nothing
doesn't
divided by
exist.
nothing is nothing.
Exactly.
I know one.
Okay, if you take nothing from nothing, you expect to get something. If you multiply nothing by nothing, you expect to get something.
Let me let you finish your point.
Right. But really and truly, guys, we are asking a lot of our population which has nothing to give. But you know what? If as much as the population cannot give, the population can change. Change may not happen overnight. Because when I was going to school, you couldn't wear half plaits and all kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm watching a lot of these young boys going to school with plaits. So the things that we lobbied for when we were in our teens, we see in the change today. So if we lobby for better information, we already have more access to it, you know. But if we lobby for better information, better quality of information, maybe when Ricardo and I have children and they turn 16, maybe we might see that change. Or maybe when
What are you doing?
And I'm going to say, or maybe in 10 years, we go back to the days where you need to cite encyclopedias when you're writing your SPAs. Whatever the changes, we may not see it overnight, you know. But if we don't activate that need, that want for better, it never gonna happen. So I urge you, the listeners, you see, and Kenny's always say the listeners of WAC are from 35 to 101 or whatever age group he will try and use, right? What we need to do as the listeners of WAC and the wider community is start being actively involved with our children. Get them, or grandchildren, or great-grand. Get them back to a place of fact-checking. Instead of just looking to hold ministers and prime ministers and presidents and attorney general accountable, let me start holding our own homes accountable for better information.
Remember the old adage of if you bring them a pencil, they're asking you where you get it from?
Exactly. And I'm going and I try not to be long-winded today because I find these days with all the heat and the dust in the air, I'm becoming dehydrated a little faster.
Mm-hmm. You had a grey mustache. Took chat particles.
Actually just cut it off.
Yeah, well, I grew not mine for safety.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And also we had to be mindful as well that there's a shortage of coconut water, because if you have been paying attention to the Coconut Growers Association has cited that the heat, so the coconut vendors now coming back out. So coconut water is a little scarce for a little while.
Yeah, cut a nut the other day and inside dry enough.
Serious? Was a old nut or a young nut?
I didn't think it was that old. Looked like that it could have water and drive and all kind of thing already. But anyway, moving on. I'm listening.
Also, is a young adult.
Adolescent coconut.
Adolescent coconut, right?
Yeah.
But really and truly, guys, we need to go back to a place of fact checking in our homes. We know as Trinis we like to, as we say, Mako, but Mako correct too now. Don't come and tell me Cardo have 5 children when I were very well know Cardo in Hannah.
Society is my childbirth.
Brother man,
Hey, as I say that, I want to send a special thank you to the Minds of Trinidad and Tobago Initiative for inviting me to mediate a panel that they had Friday gone. They were at a career day in Marabella North Secondary School, and I was invited to mediate the panel, and I had a great time. I believe the kids were receptive to the conversation on my particular style of delivery. It was a real nice experience, and it was interesting to me that even after the panel, when the kids were allowed to approach the different tables and the different career groups and such, UTT and MyLAT and that type of thing, the GSTT, etc. While we were circulating, some of them came to me with questions about graphic design and communication and that type of thing, and I felt moved because I had gone there as a facilitator. I did not expect to have to be in a position to actually, mentor any of these kids, even peripherally. And it reminded me that even in these spaces, we mightn't catch everybody, but it's the one or two. And it re-instilled in me a need to present, to be there, to not just show up, right? But to walk with my lunch, in a sense. You don't know who you could help with the little bit that you have. So I'm really grateful to them for that opportunity, and I want to continue to encourage the mentorship groups that are out there, the Empowers and the Minds of Initiative of Trinidad and Tobago, the groups that having the conversations and going into these spaces to reach the young men and women, and particularly the young men, because I am saddened. There was something that I witnessed myself. The young women show an interest and a hunger for the thirst and for the information and opportunities presented to them, and it is simply because they believe that these things that people are speaking are available to them. And the young men have a bit of a lethargic approach because, as far as they're concerned, they're seeing less and less examples of these things being possible for them. So it's a reminder for us to continue doing what it is we're doing and to continue stepping into these spaces. When somebody asks, well, how this little black boy from Marabella could interview an ambassador, I just kept showing up, and opportunities presented themselves. And I'm hoping that somebody out there sitting down and thinking to themselves, wait now, pretty much all you have to do is keep showing up. Excellence is a consequence of habit. Is a consequence of consistency. Yeah, the people who just win the race is the people who don't stop running. Pretty much the people that you see reach where they reach is because they never stop. We all have reasons to not show up and to not continue and to not persist. The winners are those who just didn't stop. So show up in whatever capacity that you can. Be the only person in the room with manners if that's what it takes. Be the only person who show up when everybody else staying home. At the end of the day, we in a position where we get to choose to some degree the lives that we want to create, the futures that we want to have. And something that kept popping up on social media was that we want to go back in the past and change little things or even big things so that it would give us a different present. But we're not willing to change the little things or big things now to give us a better future. I want to share this last point before I hand back over to you, Aaron, because we're getting perilously close. Last week was very, very interesting for me. The Monday evening, I was in a conversation with a brilliant speaker by the name of Soraya Dean, right? Brilliant Muslim woman who's speaking out in empowering women. The next day, we were interviewing a young Muslim from Turkey, Mohammed Chetinkaya. The day after that, I was celebrating Eid with a family in their home, and it reminded me, those 3 days concurrently, it reminded me that we have a shared experience, and they don't have to be identical to be amicable. You don't have to reflect me for me to care about you. You don't have to reflect my ideologies for us to have understanding and peace. It was a reminder to me that I also have a responsibility in this seat to risk upsetting people in the hopes that somebody sees that, hey, somebody willing to try to bridge the gap. And is a thing that I'm going to step into a little more confidently and a little more boldly, because you know what? For everybody who saw the nature of the episode and got upset, there was somebody who stayed and listened. And I want to thank you, the listeners. I want to thank you for caring enough to give learning a chance, to give that shared experience a chance. You know, fact check, you know. But remember too that we, at the end of the day, we are all just human beings trying to be. And we don't have to be identical for us to be amicable. It have a lot for us to learn from each other. I think on that note, I want to say that this is Ricardo Mitchell, the social stage on the global stage. Thank you for joining us in the living room. Thank you to His Excellency Ambassador Itai Bardov for joining us for another conversation that we hope could spark some discussion in the interest of peace. To the listeners, I love all you, I love all you, but don't get vexed with me. If I don't mind if all you get vexed with me. Remember, the hourglass, yeah, don't worry, Aaron, think it out, play it over, you go, figure it out. Remember guys, the hourglass is opaque. We don't know how much time remains, so whatever you're doing, be good and stay safe. Aaron?
This is your truly DJ Aaron 868. I forgot at the start. I had to make sure and do it at the end. Happy birthday, Damien. Alright.
Melville?
Yeah, Melville.
Hey! I like him too,
Right.
bad. I see him on MCI events and it a couple years ago it was, and that's when I realized, wait, now this man had thing. But God bless.
I like him sometimes. Right. This is your truly DJ Aaron 868. I remind you each and every time that quality is my code, and I also remind you that love is the currency. Spend some today. Let somebody know you love them, guys. We closing with this song for the foreseeable future. It's called The Call from King David. As I'll call them, the Reggae Avengers.
Okay, all right, yeah, that will work.
The Reggae Avengers. So let's take in that call. Remember, Mr. Desmond is up next with the big band. Keep it locked.
Something about this thing, you know. Somebody has to bring back the balance, you know, hey. Yo, Sash.
Okay, what go on, buddy?
You ain't see the way the streets in Trinbago I get bloody.
Shots not ringing out here, dog. My daughter trying to study, and on news before news, it's 2 more dead bodies.
Things are heading downhill, I like it, don't intend to stop.
Telling
Now
me.
my son no sure to come back if I send him to the shop.
There was another pandemic, how the bodies them a drop, cause every other get a youth shop.
For real. Sometimes I feel like the new music bring badness back in style. Place full of fully dance, man, woman and
I
child.
wonder if it's cause the people that know hear us for a while. The whole country I get filed, but we fed up at the boom, fed up at the bang, fed up at the warrings, fed up at the gangs, fed up at the violence. Time it fi stop. Time fi bring the country back.
Fed up at the boom, fed up at the bang, fed up at the warring, fed up at the gangs, fed up at the violence. Time it fi stop. Time fi bring the country back. Hey, you see the news last night, Sash?
Kingman a ball.
Hold on, I feel like I didn't see it to the call.
Voila!
See, one go on, brothers. Well, I see 2 great ones calling me. To what do I owe the honors?
Ziggy boy, we trying to reach them youths them on the corners.
Them who giving up the ghost, calling themselves what kind of numbers.
No fuse them in the streets, belly balling out for younger. Till somebody asks them, what team you rocking under?
And them youths lost, and they started when they small.
All the watch vibes that dog, like King David trying to call. Yo, David.
Go far right when me know true, but bread you know telling me shots busting up by you.
Dan, and up to now, me need a single siren. Yo, switch the video, they Anna call with Ziggy and King.
Serious?
Oh, brother.
It's like a meeting call to order.
other. Oh, David, nah man, we just happen to link each other.
Well, I don't feel that this just happen. I think now is the time for us to free the youth them mind. Cause we fed up of the boom, fed up of the bang, fed up of the warring, fed up of the gangs, fed up of the violence. Time if we stop. Time fi bring the country back.
We fed up of the boom, fed up of the bang, fed up of the warring, fed up of the gangs, fed up of the violence. Time if we stop, warlord. Time fi bring the country back.
Long time was moral pitch and upscotch. Now it's only gunshots everywhere a hot spot.
When music was top notch, now it's only bus clock. So we need to bring the balance for the madness to stop.
Don't want them already, but things are get shredder. Now we need to show the youths how to love one another.
Too much gang warfare and violent time in this time. Who could? The prophet on the line. Bobo.
King what really going on in this country? Like all them new song making gun factory. Last night they run in a house and kill three.
I know how you talk call with David, Sash and Ziggy.
We know saying it's time cause the youth and them blind. And how many more bodies the police must find?
And who stands to benefit the most of a crime? Press down to the 6, 7 and the 9. So we fed up of the boom, fed up of the bang, fed up of the warring, fed up of the gangs, fed up of the violence. Time if we stop. Time fi bring the country back.
Fed up of the boom, fed up of the bang, fed up of the warring, fed up of the gangs, fed up of the violence.
Time if we stop. Come on. Time fi bring the country back. The country fed up of the violence.
Yeah.
Cause it never really make no sense.
One do them.
Some of them little youth man like them skull dead.
Fed up of the gangs,